Chapter 17, Dr. Frank. What could I say about what happened? My mind reeled. I felt that the universe had supplied me with gifts of intellect and privilege, only to throw them in my face with stark vengeance. Since I was a young child, I had been surrounded by so many men of great regard and brilliance. Why was it that they should live such noble, carefree, empowering lives, and my one hope to make a name for myself and to provide others with the gift of life should come crashing down like Hokusai's great wave? I began to spiral, fixating on all the possible scenarios that could have led down a different path to the excitement of new life rather than what lay at my feet instead. If only I had started more simply or paid for more thorough security. If only I had kept Ezra out of my business and my life. If only my father, a monster of his own accord, had not decided to destroy my life beyond the grave. If only, if only, if only. For a brief moment, I contemplated whether or not it was a mistake to refuse Ezra's proposal. Perhaps, if I had married him, he would have been satiated enough not to destroy my life's work. But when my thoughts began to travel down that pathway, I was reminded of his ultimate goal, to steal my life's work, to turn me into his servant. As always, the thoughts carried me back to my lost love, my Hannah. She was all I wanted, and I had allowed her to get taken down by my hideous ambition too. Thoughts of Hannah led me to seek out her spirit in comfort, even if I couldn't reach her in person. I drove a few miles out of the city to the creek by the woods where I had scattered her ashes a few days after her memorial. By the time Hannah died, no one besides her parents knew that we had ever reunited, as we hoped to surprise my family with our romantic union once we had ushered the perfect child we imagined would accompany us into the world. Hannah's family only knew what had happened after Ezra's heinous act. At the memorial, I told everyone Hannah died of complications from childbirth. I did not invite my family to attend. I told Hannah's family, who I suspected knew everything until the delivery, that the child had died at birth. It was hard to tell whether they believed me or not. I wept uncontrollably at the service. Silber attended. I found her expression of grief striking, but didn't give the moments much attention, as I was far too centered in my own grief and guilt to notice much of anything else. At the creek, so long after her death, I ran my hand through the freezing, rushing water with my eyes closed, trying to imagine I was touching Hannah herself with my fingertips, even though she was not available to me in human form. Making sure no one could hear me, I implored her to help me, sobbing hysterically as I told her about the monster that killed her, that it had taken 2 bodies from the earth in addition to her own. I expelled all the demons I'd held in my body for so long. As I screamed each torment into the breeze caught by the creek that took it under, into its current, I could feel all the pains fall from my body. My stomach unclenched itself. The tension in my face released, and my breath grew in dimensions, losing its shallow, raspy quality. But the healing powers of unloading my pains onto Hannah, I couldn't see only made me feel that much worse about all the deaths on my back. How did I deserve to exorcise these lost souls after what I had done to uproot them from the earth? Although my torment was briefly alleviated, the minute I emptied it into the water, like a tide, threw them right back. It seemed there was no end to my dismay, because there was no decision I could make that would undo this monster's destruction or prevent it from hastening. That is, until the following morning. At first, I thought it was a dream, just one of my many recurring nightmares about the fiend since it had first been pulled, enormous and bloody, out of my love's protruding belly. I heard the quaking of thunderous steps outside my house while I slept fitfully, a sleep to which I had grown accustomed. Given what a paranoid disaster I had become in the wake of Caroline and Justin's deaths, I didn't pay it much mind at first. I assumed I was merely hearing things, Or perhaps it was just the house making its usual shifts and creaking noises as it settled. I went, fitfully, back to sleep. But then, as I began my day early the next morning, I could swear I witnessed a gargantuan shadow flit past my kitchen window. My pulse raced, my heart quickened its beat in my chest. Finally, it was unmistakable. 3 resounding thumps on my front door, so deep and loud that a saucer danced on the kitchen counter before it fell to the floor with a shatter. My initial impulse was to ignore the visitor, purely out of fright. It couldn't be, I thought to myself. How could it be? Why would the horrific thing make it so easy for me to find? As I tried to determine what I should do, 3 more thunderous raps beat on the door. I darted up and looked through the peephole. I couldn't even see a face. All I could see was a piece of fabric, torn and damaged. I reasoned that there wasn't much I could do at this point if it were indeed the demon standing at my door. If it were coming to kill me, perhaps I would finally feel relief to leave this torturous life. I certainly wouldn't be able to outrun it. The only thing left to do was answer. If someone told me the story of what had stood before me, I would not believe them. It was indeed the miserable wretch I had created. It stood barefoot, wearing a tattered, wrinkled tunic that seemed fashioned from endless yards of muslin? Shorts made from the same material. Its eyes were the piercing blue I had manipulated science for. But in this fashion, they felt like the eyes of some supernatural being. It was an enormous creation, maybe 8 feet tall, if not taller. Its stature made more horrific by its size. Covering its dark blonde complexion, I still remember from its infancy was a thick layer of red hair on its arms, legs, and chest. Even its cheeks and forehead, which were spotted with small bubbles of fresh acne and scars, I recognized from picking my own blemishes as a teenager. Its hands were 4 times the size of an ordinary person's, and its feet, which had been of a more normal size when it was born, had grown to match its hands. Its legs almost reached up to its breasts, which were massive and hung loosely in its makeshift shirt. But it was unclear whether the breasts were enlarged pectoral muscles or breasts, because I had never seen the creature as human. It had never mattered to me whether it had female or male reproductive organs. Perhaps it had both. The being said nothing as I spent several minutes taking in its appearance and gargantuan size. I assume it was used to such stares and bold objectification. After some time, the shock began to settle somewhat, and I came back to some version of myself. Remembering who this demon was, this was the demon who cost my darling Hannah her life, who killed a small boy and inadvertently caused his mother's suicide. But if it was coming to kill me, it was what I deserved. I was no longer afraid of my own death after so many other deaths had already happened due to my negligence and self-interest. So, it's you. I knew it. How on earth did you manage to cobble out a life after I left you in the woods to die? You are wretched, and you killed a small innocent child for nothing. Kill me if you must, but I have not a word to say to you. I spat at the creation I had hoped so long ago to envelop with love rather than contempt. The creation that I had imagined for so many years would be the center of my greatness, that would help me climb heights that no woman had ever seen. But all that was gone now. This was all that remained of my ambitions. The creation didn't flinch at what I said, but merely gazed upon me for several long minutes of silence. Its next words surprised me. I do not want to kill you. I am not ready to hear you say anything. But look, I once had love in my heart, love that could have been fostered if you had shown me any kindness or humanity. I beg you, if you will do nothing else for me, if you will not love me or cherish my existence that you yourself caused, please, at the very least, listen to my tale. I have but one small request. I will not force you to grant it, but I sincerely ask that you at least hear it through before you deny me. It is the least I deserve. It took my lack of response as agreement and gestured for me to follow it outside of my small house. We ran through the woods until we came to its hiding place, a structure built of twigs and branches that offered some protection from the weather. It was here that it began to tell me its tale.